I'm sorry, I'm a very annoying human being when I,
Carry on. Believe me, I can throw it right back in your face, mate.
But what a beautiful face I have.
well, it's definitely one for radio. But
You used that joke last week, Gary.
Well, I say it every week.
Oh, okay.
It's normally about myself. Welcome to the Graphters Podcast.
Hello, Gary.
Hello, John. How are you?
I'm great. We're almost on time. I think we're
almost on time. I can't. When was the last time we were ever exactly on time? I mean, in terms of, for one thing, even having a valid record time, let alone a valid day that we pick.
I think it was the second one.
It was the second one.
Just like the Olympics, it was downhill all the way after that.
Oh well, not to be finicky, but I think we're at the time of recording this, we still haven't won a single medal.
There's still time.
Yeah. But let's be honest, unless it's curling, we ain't got a chance in hell.
The Jamaicans have beaten the bobsled team in the worst start.
What again?
Yeah, well, they just fell over at the start. Our guys.
Was that Jamaica? Was it?
Yeah, and all our guys could do was flip the bobsled. Still pretty impressive.
I still think my favourite. I know this has nothing to do with 3D or anything at all, but my favourite thing to watch is the luge. Anyone who has the balls to slide down at 30 to 40 miles per hour minimum on a tea tray deserves all the credit they get.
Yeah, it is. Have you seen the helmets that they're wearing this year? They've got very, very well decorated helmets, where all the pattern is actually on the top of the helmet.
Is that so that when they crack and all the blood comes spurting out, no one can see it?
You're starting to get a little bit gory there.
I try my best.
Next, it'll be dog tags on the toes.
No. What are you talking about?
Sorry, I was watching Kill Team or Black Hawk Down or something like that on Amazon the other day.
Right.
It was just one of those visual pictures that sticks with you. Why are you tying your dog tags to the toes? So they can find his body parts.
This is why I watch Encanto. This is why I watch anything but. I used to watch gory films all the time. I try and avoid the gory crap. But even though my favourite film of all time, actually all the visual effects, not one of them was created on computer. Go on, John. What's the film?
Ooh, Star Wars?
Nope.
But that would be correct.
Yes, that had visual. Yeah. Well, it depends.
No computers. No computers.
No computers. No. Well, actually, no. That's not true. It's not true, is it? No. And do you know why, John? Why is it not true?
I thought it was all done in film and on film.
No, there was a screen which showed the Death Star in wireframe. Oh my lord! Actually, the very, very first digital effect that ever occurred in a movie. I think I might mention this before on the podcast. Westworld, that's right. Yes, it was Westworld. And
done
it
by
took them
Wavefront.
Days to generate the mosaic effect.
Yeah, done by Wavefront Technologies.
It took them forever. Yeah, bonkers. Yeah. No, it's The Thing.
The Thing. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, classic film. Obviously shot on low budget. Make it a snowstorm. You don't need to worry too much about the background scenery.
Yep.
Make it night. Yep.
Always make it night. Yes. Backlight as much as possible.
Yeah, and everybody's in little boxes. That was perfect.
Completely.
And it was scary as anything.
Oh, yes, it was scary
Absolutely
AF.
Scary. I mean, the remake didn't even get close. It didn't even get close.
Well, here's the thing. And again, this is very anti-visual effects, which it shouldn't be. The Thing again. The rebooted... Well, the version which was the sequel, but it was actually literally a couple of days prior to the first one in terms of the timeline. The whole of that film had been shot with practical effects in there, all practical. And then they went in, changed a part of the ending, and then removed all of the practical stuff and replaced it all with digital stuff.
Yeah, terrible.
Which is awful, really, isn't it? I mean, that's the film industry for you folks. I'll probably edit that bit out as well.
But one of the things I have been watching on Netflix is Dota 2. That's an anime.
Dota 2.
Dota, obviously the game Dota, has been reimagined in a 2D cell animation. Pretty good stuff. Really enjoyed it. The storyline's been quite good as well, and they've got dragons. So what else could you say when they've got dragons?
Can't be bad. I've been watching. I tell you what, actually, shall we? Because obviously, there is more than two of us. We have a guest, everybody, which is everyone seems to say who listens to the podcast it's better when there's three people. I think what they mean by that is they're sick and tired of hearing just us two.
Absolutely,
that's what it is. Let's be frank. And through this is all down to John. We have
again because Gary's contacts won't get on the actual radio.
Will you, David? Come on,
David.
Get a move on. It's becoming a running joke now, Dave. I'm getting a bit sick of this. And I know he listens. He listens to every single one.
Before I'm 50.
Is a gentleman who will have to introduce himself because it's probably more accurate if he does it himself, because I will make a complete pig's ear of it. It's Mr. Chris McFall.
Hello.
I feel like I should cheer then. I should be like, woo!
Hang on.
Oh, that would be the first. That would be the first time we would actually need a subtle audio over.
Very properly, yes.
Very probably.
But do you know what? I think we'll go with the white noise that came out of my mouth and my inane impersonation with my hands.
Good evening, Chris.
Oh, good evening, gents. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Just shows the power of the podcast. If we give enough name checks, they will get there, Dave.
Well, you mentioned to me about being on the podcast, and then I was listening to the last show, and I still nearly jumped out of my chair when you mentioned my name. I was like, oh, lovely. And then you did it twice, and I was like, oh.
Calm down.
I felt like a proper celeb.
And now you're here.
But you are. You are a bit.
Yeah. Well, I don't know in what circles you boys travel, but yeah. But anyway, it's a genuine pleasure to be invited on. Thanks, guys.
No, it's genuine pleasure for us having you here. I mean, as I was saying very, very quickly before we kind of went on the air officially, it is so nice to have someone who is so enthralled about open source software, even more so than I am, I think, more than likely.
I mean, it's such an important thing about the way the world's going. I mean, I started with Blender, probably 10 years ago. And prior to that, I was such an Adobe fanboy. I've been using Adobe I've been freelancing since I was 14 years old. So it was about 1994, 95, I started freelancing. As an artist, if you ever go through a hard time financially, and most of us do as artists, the last thing you want is someone to take away your paintbrushes. And that's what a lot of subscription models do. They say, having trouble paying the bills? Well, guess what? Your means to pay the bills, we're confiscating that. And never mind just that. It's the archival idea of one day, in 40 years' time, I'm no longer a professional practicing artist, so I'm not paying my dues, I'm not paying the subscription. But I might want to go back and revisit some of that art and look at it and go, what? And I'm going to need... Or what if that company goes defunct? With open source, you're basically saying, you're the artist, these are your tools, you have forever access to it, and it's forever yours. And in that manner, it's created such a powerful and wonderful community who, most of us would take a bullet for Tom Rosenthal, wouldn't we? Let's face it. It's changed and transformed so many lives.
I'd certainly buy him a latte.
Yeah, well, I've bought him a few beers in my time, but yeah, he's it's one of these things where it's such an important. It's transformed so many lives, and it's not just blowing smoke to say that. It genuinely has changed mine, and I live in a fairly affluent country. I mean, it's Wales, it's not that affluent, but I live in a fairly affluent country. Do you know what I mean? It's only small areas of Wales are considered third world. So but imagine the transformative effect something like Blender has on someone where it's less affluent and there is less access and there is less availability. And how it can transform a life in that regard. I could go on, but I think we'd be here for days.
But I mean,
don't feel you have to stop for us.
Yeah, I mean, just on that. I mean, all right, I am the newest to the Blender party in the virtual room, and it's been well documented that by Gary, that I was probably one of its biggest critics. I think that historically, if you were to go back far enough between Power Animator and then what was 3ds Max, and then that became, Max. The big challenges that were all happening inside there. You had Soft Image, XSI, Lightwave, all of those, pioneering packages. And I think the commonality in a lot of those packages was how they orientated the mouse, wasn't it? That was the commonality.
What, the trackball?
Well, which side the menu pop-ups came on, and I think that Blender for such a long time resisted and did it the opposite way around.
And it's for left click, right click.
Which was the hard bit for the people that had, I think, worked before.
Not you, Gary. During the early days, if you wanted it to be a left click, you just had to go in there and just change it. It was always there.
Question, Mr. Noden.
Yes.
How do you use Blender? Are you a right click guy or a left click guy?
I'm a left click guy, but I was a right click guy before that. The thing is, I've been using Blender now for, let me think, well, probably about the same length of time as you, but I didn't use it full time for quite a while. So I would dip into it and try and pick up bits of it because I was using Maya. I still am using Maya. But whenever I do a project for myself, I would always think, right, okay, I know I've got access to Maya, but I'm going to try and do it in Blender. So I could take the knowledge base that I had from Maya and try to work on that and get it into Blender. Ironically, in fact, remind me of that in a second because I'm going to come back to that. Then when I was freelancing, I started to, because I freelanced for about 10 years, I started to move into it. It's still right-clicking, obviously, because it was still right-click, and do more stuff in Blender because I was starting to realise that I was understanding the processes much more accurately in relation to how to use the modifiers. And because I'd never really used 3ds Max in any great earnest, I'd never really got into my head about the modifier tree. And I just saw a modifier as something that was more like in Maya, where you'd make something and then you'd bake it out completely. So it was only there for the purpose of making something else. And then slowly but surely I started to realise when they started making some of the sculpting tools, and I started thinking, hang on, this is getting quite good. And then the moment they changed to left click, by that point I knew about 50%. I would say I knew about 50% of the stuff that I was doing was being done in Blender anyway. And then it was.
What do you mean when they choose? They didn't change to left click. They've never changed to left click.
When they made it the primary way of. Is that a better way of putting it?
It's not. It's still right click.
Are you a right clicker?
Of course I am.
Of course you are.
Yeah. Well, it's the segregation of selection and manipulation. And it makes perfect sense.
No, there's no. I'm not denying it was a. It's if you okay. I hold my hands up. Okay, I'm a left clicker, but then you see.
You come round here insulting us Blender purists. I'll give you Noden.
Watch it, McFall. You can pull the Scottish card if you want to, but you can't live in Wales and do that at the same time. I ain't now having it. I'm originally from Shropshire, you see. I'm closer to a Welshman than you are. So don't you start. We are going to be so cancelled. Thank you very much.
I think I think it's still acceptable to do a Scottish accent.
That was a very Edinburgh Scottish accent. That was.
Well, but look, you can call me version. Robert.
It's a very posh one.
Well, it's my family. Half my family are from Glasgow. Half my family are from Cardiff, which makes me a little bit stabby. But other than that, there's.
No, so basically I'm a bit of a left clicker, but then as I say, because you just worked with Blender, didn't you, pretty much?
I actually I worked early doors with I think Wings 3D, Blender and Messiah.
Wow. Oh right, yes, that's a good piece of animation software.
I couldn't stop it crashing, so it was frustrating. But and also I wasn't a good animator at the time. I wasn't an animator. I didn't really know what was what. But by the time I got the option, basically I started using Blender because I come from a photography and design background, and I did a master's degree in filmmaking.
Nice.
And a lot of what I was sort of doing was for pre-visualization, because I didn't know how to make films and I couldn't afford to practice. So I would do a lot of previs, and I'd be throwing it together in, Poser and bits and bobs like that, and just trying to use what I could. So I had some inkling of 3D, and I'd done some work in Maya years prior to that, just tinkering. and a bit of Max.
What, left clicking?
It was disgusting. Yeah. I still haven't got the stink out of my fingers. So yeah, it was. So I had that dabbling sort of thing, but then I was working for a company and basically doing a lot of product photography, and they said, "Listen, Chris, we've got these products. We need them in the Argos catalog tomorrow. We need to get them over to Argos to go into the catalog." I said, "No problem. I'll clear the schedule. What pallet are they on? I'll go and photograph them." He goes, "Oh, they're not in from China yet. They haven't shipped." I said, "Well, what do you want me to do about it?" He goes, "Figure it out." I went, "Okay." I went away, came back half an hour later. I said, "I'm going to need a budget. I can get this done, but I'm going to need a license for some software." And they went, "No." So I went, "All right." And I went away, came back half an hour later and went, "I think I've got something, but don't hold me to that." And I spent the rest of the day learning Blender, and it was like Blender 2.4, I think. Really bad interface, really dodgy. And I basically put together a pack shot. We had the die cuts of the packaging that I'd designed, so that was ideal for UVing, and managed to form that into a box, and then sort of made a rudimentary model of the headphones, figured out materials. In 24 hours, I managed to get that done, rendered, and sent to the Argos catalogue. A week later, I had animated a motion sort of graphics advert for it, and literally I had a few members of staff, like I was managing a very small team, and I was just offloading all my work onto them so I could play in Blender. And then by the time they turned around and said, "Chris, this is amazing stuff. What you've been doing the last couple of months is fantastic. What do you need from us? We can get you that software now." I said, "On your bike." I don't want it. And they said, "Wow, that's even better." So they gave me a bonus to show how grateful they were. And I think it was something like 50 quid.
Do you know what? It's not the amount that matters. It's the thought behind it when it comes to that sort of thing. And the fact that you've done all of that, and you've actually given them something which they weren't expecting, and it's cost them no more than it would have been originally.
It's interesting, Chris, because something similar happened when I got involved with Blender. Just at the start of lockdown, a project came up, and I'd not been on the tools for a good while at that point. And a project came up, and my son was doing animation, motion design at the college. But I know the rules, and obviously the education versions of Maya that we had, we wouldn't be allowed to actually commercially produce anything. And so I said, well, if you give us a bit of time, we can get this done, but we've first got to learn the software that we need to use to get it done. And we ended up doing a full animation of a toy train in Blender. It even passed the Norden test when I sent the rushes over. He was quite impressed with not the first cut, but the second cut.
No, the second one it did, yeah.
I was going to say there's a bit of an homage to Coronation Street in there.
With the houses?
With the houses and the camera coming up behind these little... And everything
rising
was done,
up, pouring down the street.
Crane.
Everything was done with a very shallow depth of field, wasn't it? So,
well, that always makes it look smaller, so that's great. Yeah. But no, the nice thing for me was when he got the train. It's in the distance and it was all out of focus, and the train comes around this corner and then comes down the track and comes straight towards camera. It just comes straight towards camera. But it wasn't until it got close enough to camera you could just see there was a tiny bit of a noise on the deformer, a noise deformer just on the animation curve on the actual card itself, and I just looked at it and I went, "Damn it, that's good." And it was just like, bugger. I wish I'd done that.
I know you guys are fans of Arcane. Yes. I've spent the last couple of weeks, if not a bit longer, like just picking apart bits of their style. And something I noticed, which is absolutely beautiful, is that they have the painted highlights for their eyes. They have as a separate layer, and it has noise on the rotation constantly. There's ever such slight noise, so there's always a shimmer in the eye. But I just, when you said about the train, I was just thinking, it's those little touches which
and
it helps.
It all happened.
Makes such a big difference.
All happened by accident. I clicked a button in the graph editor, and I couldn't find it then to turn it off.
What's that thing in the end? What's that thing on the right-hand side? I accidentally pressed N, and now I don't know what I'm doing.
I can't get rid of it. There was many a message going over to Gary. What do I do next? How do I get rid of this? Or where does that go? It was really enjoyable because obviously at the start of the pandemic, I mean, everything just sort of collapsed on itself. You were left with time to do lots of things that you'd never done before.
I wasn't. We never stopped.
No.
We just carried on working.
But
we all went home with a computer, and that was it.
I've never been so furious as, like, literally every time during the pandemic when they said, I've read so many books, I've done this, I've written a screenplay. I'm like, please. It's like, I'm so sorry, I forgot I'm on a podcast.
It's okay.
It's
okay, don't worry. That's the reason why I'm laughing, is because I know that's the first one I need to get rid of.
Probably won't be the last.
No, it's
I'm only this
fine.
far in, he says, brandishing his whiskey glass.
Could I ask a question, actually, if that's okay, Chris?
Please.
So, same as myself, you're a big fan of open source. Very aware of that, obviously. But what do you use predominantly for the other parts of the process? For example,
Wait, there are other parts of the process?
Like the Photoshop equivalent, for example. What do you use in that instance?
No, that's a bit of a weird one for me at the moment because I'm kind of between softwares on that. So I've got Affinity Photo because I like their business model on that. I don't mind paying for software.
It's 50 quid, isn't it?
Zero. I mean, I don't mind paying hundreds for software. Yeah, you should see my Blender Market thing. It is like I know Jonathan Williamson. I started out wanting to support his little venture. Now I'm thousands of pounds in the hole. I bought everything. But I don't mind paying for software at all. I have no problems with that. Affinity, I'm not getting on with it, to be honest. I was such a Photoshop jockey for years. Do you know what I mean? I really haven't. It's so close to it that I expect it to be it. And then when it's not, I'm like, oh, sad. So I've got Critter, and I like it, but I'm not au fait with it. I've also got PaintStorm, because I liked its brush. I liked its brush engine, and that's really quite lovely for just for a bit of painting and drawing. It's not a Photoshop replacement.
No.
But I mean, to be honest, there was a point. There was a point when I started getting heavily into After Effects before I got into Blender, where I actually stopped thinking like a Photoshop user and started thinking procedurally anyway. So there's a lot that I don't do a lot in that. I mean, I composite and like pump up the colors and get the curves out and masking and all that in Blender. I'm very happy to be using Resolve and Fusion, although I think that actually Blender is, although it's feature minimal, it is in its core elements, it is a more powerful compositor than Fusion. Its masking and rotoscoping tools are so simple, and tracking are so simple and so powerful. It's redonkulous. They are not self-explanatory, but it literally, you learn it once and it's like, okay.
When I did my first roto mask, my brain was like, I know this should be sensible and simple, but I know the Blender way of doing things. And the moment I thought that, I thought, right, I know where the mask will be. It'll be somewhere else. It won't be where I want it to be in Compose. Oh, no, it's not. It's not. It's in this window here. I could do it in this window here. Oh, and then I take the little value, and then I get it into there. Oh, there you go. Right, and then you're right. It's like, this is so simple. And again, with the tracking, it's not difficult, but it's not explained. So, but I mean, I've been using After Effects for, unfortunately, decades now. And I love Resolve, and I absolutely adore Fusion because I used to use it. We used it as our main compositor when I used to work at a company called 422 in Manchester. We had a choice. We basically had After Effects and Fusion. And
was that when it was Chaos Tools Fusion? Was it?
Oh, it was Ion, I think, at the time.
Oh, it was Ion, was it? Yeah, Ion Fusion.
I think it was. Yeah,
they've been owned by so many companies.
I know.
I tell you what, that is your ISP for this podcast, is knowing the chain of ownership for every piece of software. USP. Well,
you have to remember that. Excuse me, I'm going to bleep myself now, but we're a couple of old fucks.
I'm not as young as I look. Life's been
Yeah,
kind.
but you told me what you've already dated yourself pretty much. You're 10 years younger than we are.
Hey, if I could date myself, I would, buddy. I would.
Hey. Okay, so moving as you'll probably find, Chris, it's usually me that's reading through the running order.
Have I directly answered any questions yet, or have I just sort of diverted? I'd make Boris Johnson proud at this point of avoiding questions.
To be fair, that the opening point was open source. Go for it. That was.
I think it pretty much was, because the problem now is, of course, that John can't go quite as deeply into the open source. But I wanted to say one thing, if I could. I just wanted to remind myself. As I said before, I was using all my Maya knowledge to help me work into Blender. And just recently, I had to do it in reverse.
Use all your Blender knowledge to do it in Maya.
This is the thing. I have been learning how to use geometry nodes like everybody else. And I, as I say, work has been kind of stopping me from going too far into it. But
it's been stopping you from doing anything.
A project, shush. Well, of course it does. It's work. It pays the bills. This is a passion project. I'm learning. I'm trying to do something for the project, and I know that I can do it in Bifrost, and I can do it in Bifrost better than I can with the tools inside of Maya. Bifrost is the visual language, visual machine language thing. For anyone who doesn't know who's listening, so I opened it up and had a look at it, and someone else I know has said, if you find out how to use it, please let me know, because I need to way to learn it. I'm like, yeah, sure. So I looked for tutorials online, and there wasn't a huge amount there. And I found one which was vaguely adequate. And then I thought, hang on, this guy is talking about geometry nodes. This guy is just talking about geometry nodes. And the moment that I realised that, I knew I had an input, I knew I had to have an output. I needed to have conversion node to points, so basically get the point information. I then had to do a simulation node, and then I had to have I needed a solver node for the simulation node, and it just all made sense. I went through and built the whole thing again today from scratch for the job, which at that time when I did that, we didn't have the job. We now have the job. And then what I wanted to do was do something which was fundamentally simple, and it proved to be ridiculously difficult. I just thought, hang on, no, Gary, stop. How would I do this in geometry nodes? And it was exactly the same. So Blender has helped me do something in Maya.
So Gary Noden is now Gary Noding.
I've been G-Node, Genode, on artwork since I was about 13.
Nice.
So and Noden is the German plural of the word nodes. So as has been pointed out to me by a German mate of mine. So who actually will hear this podcast.
Whether he likes it or not.
That's
name check.
Swine. His name is Alex Kuchera. He is a Modo person and a nuke trainer and nuke specialist based in Germany. And I met him...
You said Modo person like it was a slur.
No, not at all. I'm a Modo person. I've still got a license of Modo.
Awesome.
I think
it's fantastic.
It's like
it's version 8.
It's like Rhino. That was a fantastic bit of software in its time.
Rhino still is a good piece of software. This is the thing, John. All the good ones don't go away.
They never do.
It's the iconic ones like Lightwave. Hang on, sorry. Lightwave.
I had a similar moment to yourself, but in the time before geometry nodes, there was something called animation nodes, which was it was the precursor to it, made by the same
chap. Is it Jacques Luc who did them?
Yeah. So I was at the Blender conference when he was announcing it, and I think I'm on the video asking stupid questions. And I sort of got into it quite early doors, but I found the nodal sort of way of working, despite the fact I did shaders, I found it quite tricky to get my head around. So what I actually started doing, because there wasn't a lot of information on it in those days, unlike now, I went to Houdini tutorials, specifically in Tagma, because those guys are great. And I just started looking at Houdini tutorials, and basically Blender is one of those things within the community where you get a lot of the same sort of thing. It's like more donut tutorials, do you know what I mean? Because people are just cyclical, and it's
that's
one of those
just knocked us off
where...
of how many Twitter threads just by mentioning the D word.
No. We didn't dismiss it.
No,
I would never even hint at that.
So, I was looking at, basically, rather than, you know when you're a painter, sometimes you should look at sculptures.
Yes.
Sculptors to get inspiration. So I went outside of it and started looking at Houdini, because I've always admired Houdini artists' work. And I started trying to port those ideas in, and remarkably did stuff I just didn't think was possible in Blender, and it was great. And now that, because I have that mindset, I jump into geometry nodes without a clue what I'm doing. I still don't know, because I'm not that familiar with this system. I don't use it a lot. But anytime I do want to do something, it comes together real quick, because I've got that procedural way of thinking. And it's something I'd recommend to anyone is don't just watch Blender tutorials. Watch because the real professionals out there, the guys who've been doing it for decades, they've been doing it in Maya, and they are very likely they've been doing it in Maya, in Houdini, in Lightwave, in all these different things. So go and watch them, learn the technique, because if it's rigging, there's going to be if it's rigging, if it's shaders, there's going to be an equivalent tool in Blender or a hack around it, and in that way you can just step outside of the constraints of the Blender community, because it's that Ouroboros, it's snake eating its own tail a bit, and that's something which is really wonderful. But yeah, it's now I found myself trying to port Blender stuff into Houdini and Houdini stuff into Blender, and that workaround, and it, like you said, it's quite satisfying when it works. But yeah, my God, it can be work, can't it?
Yeah, no, it can be. But as you say, yes, but when you rack your brain and you keep on pressing the buttons and saying, I know the math roughly. I know roughly what I'm doing. Why is this bloody multiply not doing what it's meant to? Oh, hang on, I haven't got the value in the bar. Oh, right.
Do you know what I did? Do you know what I did earlier today? I was working in shade.
No, I haven't got a clue, Chris. Please tell me.
I'm sorry, I talk so much.
Let's carry on. That's what it's about.
I started. Actually, I think John saw one of these. I had a weird dream the night before last of Muppets. Muppets dressed as X-Men.
Oh yes, I saw the post.
Muppets dressed as X-Men.
So I decided I needed to I don't have lunch breaks normally. I don't take lunch breaks. So what I thought, I'm going to spend an hour doing something for myself, and I made Kermit as Cyclops, and it was great fun. And then today I found myself making Wolverine Animal as Wolverine, and
you mean, I see. Yes. I thought you mean Animal as Wolverine.
There's a theme coming here.
Wolverine Animal.
Fozzie Bear.
Yeah. Fozzie Bear will be Beast.
Beast.
That's X-Men, buddy. X-Men.
I'm just going super people.
Miss Piggy.
Miss Piggy will be Jean Grey, of course.
Oh
no. She should be
Marvel
Wonder
Pig.
Woman.
She'll be Marvel Pig. That's
She's gonna be
wrong.
Marvel Pig.
It's not even. That's not even the right universe.
Listen, it doesn't all have to be Marvel. I have this conversation with my kids all the time. No, it's only Marvel.
I'm doing the X Muppets. The X
Muppets.
X Muppets. Okay, right. In that case,
So,
the Swedish chef.
There was this
Swedish chef.
Oh, actually, there was a couple of them I was struggling with. Do you know what the real problem is? There's only about 3 female Muppets. That's the real problem. A lot of lady X-Men, which is ironic.
Don't forget the chickens. They're female.
I know, but I'm using them as sentinels. I'm using them as the sentinels. So,
just to bring this dream sequence back into some sort of semblance of the podcast.
I needed to make in a shader, and I actually just realised this wasn't making the X Muppets. This was like 2 minutes later when I was actually working on a series. But anyway, I needed to make a shader that had chromatic aberration built into the shader. And I started doing it, and I was like putting it in, going, oh God, I don't know how. And then I went, it's in the wrong place. Move it from here to here. Look at the flow. Figure it. And I went, and I did it. And I was like, oh great. And then I was like, now I need TV static. And then I was like, oh God,
noise.
And then I was like, I need dare I do parallax? I had an hour, and I think it was because I'd had the time out doing something stupid like X Muppets, just to chill my brain out, that I sort of went into this thing, and I just had an hour where I just went in and all the nodes made sense. And I'm terrible at shaders. Anytime I do a tutorial, I go, I'll throw a quick shader on it. It's a 10-minute tutorial up until that point, and then it's an hour of me fighting shader nodes. But yeah, I had an hour and it just all made sense.
Yeah, I do the same with mine. If I do something and I know that this bit is going to be really boring, I start talking, and then I know, Gary, just shut up, do it. And then I just go, speed ramp to 800% in Resolve. And cut out all the audio, just put the piece of music that's liquid, just put that piece of music underneath.
I always used to put...
See, in my head, I want to do... Do you remember that?
Of course, Tony Hartman.
Oh, yeah. Oh my God, you are older than you look.
Actually, I'll tell you a fact about Tony Hart that you may not know.
Go on.
Tony Hart is an ex-Gurkha officer.
Wow.
There you go.
What isn't that was an ex-Gurkha officer?
Well, it was. Of course, he's you know. But yeah,
he's now in the Grand Gallery in the Sky.
Yes.
He is. Yeah.
He's not yet dead. He's happy.
But yeah, no, I love Tony Hart. I love Tony Hart. If I was any younger, I'd be like, I like Neil Buchanan, who is a pale imposter.
I'd just like to quickly, just to go back to some of that story about how we were talking about people do it in different bits of software and everything else. There was a Blue Zoo animation post on LinkedIn from Matt Jenkins, who's doing a bit of a spotlight on rigging, and I think they do talk quite fluidly, not so much about the actual software, but more about process.
Yeah.
Which sort of leads us into the third part of the topic, which I suppose we can bounce around our topics tonight. But in a recent conversation, I was talking to some software people, and we were discussing about how far out of touch could the education market be after the pandemic.
In what respect, John? Can you explain that a bit deeper for me?
Yeah, could you? If you could just reiterate that.
If we think about how work process and pipeline has accelerated during pandemic, and as a result of that, more software has been included in the pipeline, and more reliance has been shifted to the cloud and how we collaborate.
Yeah.
Is the siloed system of education now not fit for purpose?
Who wants to go first?
Where we actually teach. I mean, I didn't actually. It just came up and there was no real end to the conversation. It was just a sort of I'll leave that there and I'll pin that to the wall.
I was going to say, can I start with just pointing something out, which I think it needs to be pointed out. Really, is that the remote model of education has been around since about the 1960s. It was something that used to be called the Open University, and was always poo-pooed and looked upon as a lesser way of study. And if anybody turns around now after these 2 years of remote everything and says that said that Open University was a bad idea, it's a very, very valid way of educating people.
Sorry, the Open University are actually old clients of mine.
Are they?
I've done a couple of videos from... Yeah, I used to do... for the Open University of Wales. Really, I was actually talking to my partner about the Open University literally just before I got on the call. Because, I was just saying that they're really lovely people to work with. But, I mean, they also, of anyone, they have greater experience in distance learning than any other university. They should be absolutely destroying it.
They should be, yeah.
I don't know if they are.
I think they probably will. More so because people... This is the biggest problem, I think, is it's not so much about the education being out of touch, it's just that they weren't ready. No one was ready for what the pandemic was going to do to education, or to anything, I don't think. No?
I don't think education's been ready to be an educator for most of my adult life. I mean, unfortunately, I don't have very good things to say about higher education. I do have some good things to say, I should say, but I mean, they don't prepare you for the roles. I mean, I did. Here's an illustration of it. I did photography was my specialism when I was doing visual communication, and I said, look, I love being in the darkroom. I love doing all that, and it's really vital we know all that, but we need to do some modules on digital photography. And my lecturer turned around and said, it's a fad and it will pass. And I said to him, that's absolutely absurd. And I went out and I bought a Nikon D100. And I mean, I had to work 3 jobs and study to be able to do that, because they were damn expensive, and it wasn't like in their first year; it had been out for a few years. But I bought, and he I think it was about a year later he sold his Hasselblad to buy one.
Hasselblad.
After he told me it was a fad. Do you know what I mean? And they're very complementary skills, though. If I think, the first thing I taught my apprentices at the studio, I gave them a lesson in photography. Yeah. I've never seen two kids go to sleep so fast. But yeah, they're like,
but this is the thing, isn't it? Because they'll be the ones. I mean, I found the same thing when I did any teaching, and I'm sure that John has, because he's done a damn sight more than I ever have. Which is, you can see the faces of the ones that are infused by it, and you can see the faces of the ones who aren't.
Chris does himself a disservice because he jumped in on the call to Rotherham and ignited the room with excitement about a project, which is awesome. You know,
are we allowed to learn a bit more about this?
Yeah, you didn't really. Well, we name dropped you several times in the conversation.
Me. No, don't. No. I thought you meant you name drop Chris. I'm no one, mate. Don't worry about me.
No, Chris was there. He was in virtual person.
He was in virtual person.
John gave me about an hour's notice and said, "Can you come on this
That's
call?"
a lot for me, though, Gary. That isn't it? That is a lot for me.
This is the reason why these damned podcasts are so sporadic. Because I just wait for John to say, "Oh, you're ready," and I go, "Yes."
I think I think one of the things about being a freelancer and stuff, or being your own boss, is it's incredibly insular. So you store up the verbal diarrhea for a long, long time, and then when you're given a chance to unload all over some students,
it's not just.
That
sounds awful.
Got a
Let's
vision.
just not say that again.
I've got a vision.
I think
I've got a vision of Billy Connolly. With the
I remember one time, and John knows this, but I've got to tell you this, Chris. I remember one time I was sitting in this room working, and I'd been working, I think about maybe 4 or 5 days, something like that, without hardly any communication. I was sort of like, my wife would head off to work, my kids would go off to school. It was before we had a dog, so I'd just sit here, and I wouldn't speak to anyone. And about 4 days into this project, I was starting to lose my mind, even though I was spending time with the family in the evenings. But I was starting to lose my mind. And it was all 2D animation. It's all in After Effects. So I'm in Illustrator and I'm in After Effects. And I'm doing some elements in Blender. It's orthographic. And I'm in it. My phone goes. I pick it up. I don't recognise the number. Now, when I'm busy and there's people around me, I would immediately cancel that call and hope they would leave a message. I pressed the green button. I went, hello. And they said, I'm a cold caller, basically. And I was like, oh, that's good. Keep talking. And I was on the phone. I would not stop talking for about 10, 15 minutes because I was going insane, having no speaking to anybody. So I was there talking to someone who normally I would never, and I'm really sorry, everyone, I would never normally answer a cold call. And it was the most beautiful moment of my life.
I mean, you were one step away from inviting in Jehovah's Witnesses, weren't you? You were just, in you come.
How do you know that in that cupboard behind me there is not 500 watchtowers?
Have you heard the good word? Is it about Lightwave?
Are they bringing it back?
Are they bringing it back?
Oh dear.
Oh my God. Digital evangelists.
I'm having too much fun. I'm going to hate editing this.
Quickly back to the siloed marketplace. And I suppose the question came about, I was recently reviewing the top universities as per the rookies, the competition, the rookies, the top universities, and I think, big shout out to the British universities that have made the top 50. I think Hertfordshire comes in as number 22. And then there's several others in there, Norwich and Falmouth and so on. I think there's 5 out of the top 50 that are UK universities, which is great. It's good to see that we're actually University of South Wales was number 39, Chris. Interestingly enough, ahead of Media Design School, Australia in New Zealand. So, they're They are doing well.
No, that doesn't surprise
They're doing well.
me. I think it's like you think about where Outpost is, and I know I'm mentioning Bournemouth again, but Outpost, VFX, this little company that people were like, it's never going to do any good out there. Where are they based? Bournemouth. Oh, I wonder why they put themselves there. Oh, well, because basically, first of all, it's not London. It's cheaper. It doesn't have to be in central London to be a good place. It doesn't have to be in central Manchester to be a good place. It could be anywhere at all, as long as you've got the equipment and the people, and you've got an absolute front door, that you open up, and 2 miles down the road, you can pull students directly out and get them straight in on their bums on seats, so...
Well, not quite pull them straight out, and again, that was part of the conversation today. Are the students getting to the finishing line?
I mean, I nearly went to Bournemouth for my master's degree, and then I was convinced actually by the University of South Wales, or the Atrium, to go with them for their film course. And to be honest, I was massively missold that course, and I don't regret it so much on the basis of I liked my lecturer as a person, not as a lecturer necessarily. That's really mean. Oh God, this is going out in public, isn't it?
Which is the exact opposite to my students, who hated me as a person but loved me as a lecturer.
Well, that's the way it should be, buddy. But yeah, and it's one of these things where they, my lecturers had me loading tapes for them, because they didn't know how. They were paying me as a freelancer to do it. And then I came away with a really bad grade because they downgraded me because my final film had a narrative, and it was an arts film course. And it was like, well, that's not how it was sold to me. But it's one of these things where it's like this. And this was the, I think, something which John might have alluded to in the last episode, was I said, listen, I have one question. How do you make a film? How do you go from I have an idea to a complete film? What is the process? What's the pipeline? As a thought process. And she went, well, Chris, there's no one way. Of course, there is one way. There is one way. It goes like this. You have your concept. You create a script. Then you create a storyboard. You turn the storyboard into an animatic. You turn that into shots, into a shot list, and then you turn those into shots. You go and film them, and then you edit it, and then you post-process it, and then you color grade it, and then you master it, and then you print it if you're so inclined, and then you put it in the damn cinema. There is a damn pipeline, and she was so
wishy-washy because she's worked in academia all her life and has never done it for real in the real world.
Exactly. She's had a couple of grants to make art films. She doesn't understand the technical, she doesn't understand the process, and she doesn't understand the industry, and she shouldn't have been teaching that course. What she she would make an excellent lecturer in feminist theory, because she taught me more about feminism than she did about film, despite the fact, which was actually something which I was very, very interested in and really invested in. So I was glad to hear it, but I'd have to go and do the learning myself. Because,
and that's something I've heard a lot. When you get to university level, well, they've got to go and learn themselves. Well, then what are they doing here, and why are they spending $9,500?
And I actually raised that to them. I said, listen, I'm not learning on this thing. You go, well, that's not what you're here to do. And I said, what? And this is the same university that they said, you go and learn in your own time. We're here to give you the framework.
Facilitate. Like, I've heard the word facilitate used.
Which is a bullshit word. It doesn't mean anything. And then,
very well constrained there, stopping yourself from saying.
And then the other thing they said was, and this was to actually a lecturer there who was a friend of mine. He was like, this guy, I think it was the visual effects course. He was saying, listen, why has this kid got all these grades? Why is he getting these grades? We know he's not putting he's not delivering on what such and such. He said, well, he's the most talented one in the class. He's producing excellent work. Okay, he's not doing the paperwork, but he said he's the talent. And the dean of the college turned around and said, talent has no place here. And I'm sorry, that's the wrong. Tell that to an employer, because that's what you're supposed to be doing, is prepping people. It's not pure academia. You're supposed to be preparing people for an industry in these courses.
Yeah.
Imagine preparing a carpenter who didn't know his arse, the arse end of a saw from the Can
I say, in defence, because I feel exactly the same way as you do, Chris. I feel utterly the same way as you do. But I look back to when I was studying, And what we were taught a piece of software that wasn't even used in the industry, that was created by the professor at Bournemouth.
Is that Seagull?
So the
Seagull.
Yeah, the database animating by a database.
If you wanted to change the color type, you used to go COCTT, which was change object color texture type, and then you'd change its color values. It was
Still remembers.
And I'll never forget that. There are certain things you never forget. No, but the point is, at that time, I think a lot of the courses and so on, they just didn't have enough people doing it for it to be anything other than an academic thing. So what's happened is, thankfully, people like, everyone I know who works in the education system now, 50% of them actually worked in the industry, and 50% of them haven't. So what you've got is you've got the academia people who, as you say, received money to make a film, and then another grant to make another film, and then did a conversion of their degree to a master's via one 12-month period, and then went straight into teaching.
Yeah, I've got a bit of a theory, Gary, and I think we've talked about this before. But in the 90s, when I worked for Silicon Graphics, we were doing a lot of business with universities that were being grant funded, and this was a time when everyone was going to go to university. There were government messages on that sort of thing, and it was a shift. It was the time period where the shift happened from analog to digital in the production phase of creative content. And at that point at that time, universities had better equipment, better software, and more understanding of the software than the industry did. But then what they did is they went away and they got together and they wrote courses over 3 to 4 years. And then they produced those courses 5 years later. Then they introduced those courses being cutting edge, by which time the industry had actually figured it all out. Now, this is coming from the back of the inside of my eyeballs.
It looks like your eyes. For anyone
in.
who's listening, John's eyes are moving from left to right across the screen.
It's rapid eye movement. He's gone into a trance state.
I am in a trance-like state. And then when they finally launched these courses, the industry said, well, that's not how we do it anymore.
No, yeah, I know.
And I think and has now become the case. Hence the reason why the question, after the pandemic's finished, will education finally admit that
will there be anything left?
Will their 3-year program courses actually be revised to be more fluid?
No, they won't. What they will do... no, Chris, you can wait. What they will do is they will still run 3-year courses, but they will run a module per year.
Well,
and then what people will do is they will do 2 years and they will drop out because they've got the information they need. Yeah. And there'll be a lot of people who won't finish a degree.
And I think the biggest problem I know from being inside the industry is that whilst the people come to the courses, there is no reason to change. People will go to those courses. And I suppose the hope is that several of the shining lights, like the ones on the rookies, are the ones that will drive forward and make those changes from the top down. We can hope.
I will say this as a little beacon of hope. I did some work a few years ago with the Arts Council of Wales, where they basically said they wanted arts practitioners to essentially go into these schools and teach something. So I put a proposal of teaching Blender to these kids, and so I was going in, and I won't go into the details of the nightmares that lay in that horrible path I cut myself. But the one thing that they did do, which I really appreciated, was they said, we want to focus on the concept that you're training kids to do a job that doesn't exist yet. That the focus is about the jobs these students are going to be doing haven't been invented yet. The software hasn't been coded yet. Mm-hmm. The realities haven't been realized yet. And that it is about preparing them for that in the abstract and not doing this literal task and this thing. And that's what we did. So it was like we were going, okay, well, narrative and storytelling are the keystones of any creative endeavor. Absolutely. And almost any logical endeavor. Story is everything.
Yes.
Everything can be boiled down to a story, and that's what I want you to do. And then we're going to realize the story in this software, because also 3D space is going to be something that is far more engaged with by the general public over the next couple of years. And they ate that up. And then I went in and 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 was in what felt like a bloody war zone, because high school is hell. It turns out.
Just as a beautiful little segue to our final little topic of the night, which is funding in the UK for creative ventures. And you've just identified there that, I think, is it Creative Wales or
that was the Arts Council.
Yeah, that was the Arts Council, but
which I think is funded by Creative Wales.
Yeah, so there's Creative Wales, and we've got Creative England, we've got other things. Is there enough funding being pushed out?
Not even close. I mean, right. But I think I had this conversation with you, John, at some point. But it's like I actually had this conversation very recently with a head of Cluster, which is a Welsh development fund, one of the heads of Cluster, I should say. And we were discussing it, and it was like, well, the French put a butt ton of money into animation and art forms. Europe, even sort of more impoverished countries put money into the creative arts, and we do not anymore. Wales is trying, but obviously Wales is sort of, Westminster has a lot of control over that, say, and Westminster is really down on the arts. It does not supply it. And because of Brexit, we have now been cut off from all European markets unless we have European partners. And who the hell wants to partner with a company from a xenophobic island like Britain? It's become very tricky. It's become real tricky. Unless you've got something really unique. I mean, fortunately, that's one of the wonderful things about the Blender community. It's my community, the people who I consider my friends, who I normally would fly to Amsterdam every year to see at the conference. They're really international people and really lovely. So, I mean, I do have an opportunity there possibly to reach out and find partners and that sort of thing. But, that isn't available to everyone. But it's a really tricky thing. We're in a real bind. What I will say is there is business funding.
Yes.
If there's one thing you can say for the Tories is that they do try and back business, at least, where to some extent.
But that's only because they want their business to go well, so that they can get more money back.
It's because so they can get backhanders, they can exploit loopholes. But I mean, because of that, they open certain doors for businesses. So I mean, I've found as an individual, I've never managed to find any arts funding for myself, for whatever reason that might be. But as a business, we changed tack and went, you know what? What about as a business? Can we pursue something? We actually have managed to access small pots of funding in the last 12 months. That finally I've actually got projects of mine funded to do pilot schemes, so that we can then develop something and we can try and go and sell it and then make jobs and do all this. And it's a huge sea change for me, because I got so caught up in the, I guess, lifestyle business of being a freelancer, because I could never find funding. I didn't have access to the things I needed to develop the business. So I've got stuck in that rut. And now I've got these tiny little pots of money that I can actually use to be more mobile, I guess, and try and do something that I care about, and not have to do colostomy bag adverts for a change, which is nice. I've got to admit, I thought colostomy bag was the bottom of the barrel, but that's
No, trust me, there is always, and no matter what we think is the worst thing, someone else will have done something else.
Absolutely.
That's what you want in the comments. Is like, it's what's the worst CG job you've ever had? What's the worst, most embarrassing thing you've had to do?
That is actually a really, really good idea. I'll put it onto my YouTube channel. What's the worst thing you've ever built?
Just on the YouTube channel. Congratulations, Gary. 1.38.
Is that what I've got now?
Yes.
Is that as of today?
As of today, yeah.
That'll do.
That sound like double my following. That's
rubbish, can't be. You must have more than me.
Yeah, no, I've got a very meager following. I don't. I've been doing it for like nearly as long as I've been doing Blender, but I've hidden most of the early videos.
Right,
I was doing
mine's out there.
I was doing videos for CG Cookie initially.
Oh wow, yeah.
So I started doing stuff for them, and I did a bit with a competition for CG Masters, and then I did CG Cookie, and then I did like a couple of magazine articles, and then it was like I started doing the YouTubes, and Yeah. I've never. I actually do YouTube more as a way to remember stuff, because once you've taught something to someone, that's how it stays. And so doing YouTube stuff was a bit self-serving, and then now I currently do it for like next gen when I'm doing the boot camps, because I do I'm the Blender sort of Blender contender, the Blender go-to guy for Blue Zoo and Next Gen when they're doing their boot camps and Next Gen sort of videos. So I'll do like YouTube videos on request for them, and I've got a channel called Blender Clinic. Plugging myself.
Do it.
And so
I wish our audience was larger, so it didn't make a difference.
Yeah,
no, it does.
Worry.
I mean, honestly, if one person follows and it helps them, then that's the whole thing, isn't it? But
Yes.
I mean, literally, when I do these videos, I'm not like I've never pushed for YouTube site, but it's like I put those videos on there for the people as like a secondary part of the service with Next Gen and with Blue Zoo, and then also for my own staff. It's like I get sick of showing them the same thing 4 times, so I go, look, I'll just do you a video. Here it is, and it's that sort of thing. I would like to do more with YouTube, but to be honest, every time I think I've got it sussed and I understand what it is, the algorithm or model changes, and it's like, I've been looking at doing TikToks actually.
Well, I think a lot of I think the future is short. One in
What,
particular.
we're all going to die?
No. Well, there is that. Well, we are, but hopefully not that quickly. Omicron's been downgraded to a cold practically. We're okay now, apparently. No, it's doing. It's like the YouTube Shorts. They're a great way of getting content out really, really fast. And who is it? Who is it? It's not Jan Van Hemel.
Ian Hubert.
Oh, I love Ian's stuff. I adore Ian's stuff. The man seems a little bit out there, which is even better. I love
Ian
that about
Hubert
him.
has got to have already coined the short video, the 1 minute.
Absolutely. I mean, but the problem that he's found is that he does these 1 minute videos as like a quick thing he can do, and then he has to spend a month in the comments going, "Look, it's not that simple." I actually follow his Patreon, as of very recently, because I've always Ian is as close to myself as I've seen in another Blender guy. There's something about his attitude and his approach to stuff that is similar to me. Although
throws himself headlong to try and get the results that he wants.
Yeah, we've sort of diverted in the sense that he is now almost purely doing film, and I almost purely do animation now. I was very visual effects and very film oriented, but I started going his Patreon because I thought, do you know what? I miss him.
Yeah.
And I want more.
Yeah.
And it is the best value for money of any subscription I've ever had. It's ridiculous.
Because I've got Erindale on Patreon at the moment. I was following Ducky 3D, but he went a bit commercial for me, so...
I've only seen a few
Happens to them
Duckies. I've only seen a few of Duckies, but he's quite he's got some useful stuff. Do you know who I saw recently was it's Polyfjord?
Yes.
Now Polyfjord did probably the finest fire and smoke simulation tutorial I'd ever seen for Blender, bar none, because simulation in Blender is hard, and he goes, right, this is how you get the result, and it's like, okay. I mean, because I've always been able to do it, but I never had any control. That's why I use Houdini for simulation. Houdini has control. But Polyfjord made a beautiful video on it. But he recently did a video on doing Dr. Octopus robot arms. And that boy does not know how to rig. No. And he actually asked at some point, he was like, if anyone knows why or how to fix this. So I dropped him a message. I haven't heard back because P.I.C.N.I.C rigging is kind of my specialty. That's I use splines in everything because I'm a maniac and I hate making things too easy.
So much easier than trying to do a lot of other ways of rigging.
But what he did it was genius in its simplicity, but it was very limited in its execution. So it was one of those things. But yeah, Polyfjord's an interesting one. Ducky seems pretty cool. Southern Shotty.
I love Southern Shotty. The style that Southern Shotty pulls off with his little animations it's just brilliant. It's so harmless, but brilliant.
He's got it's what Southern Shotty's got, which most of them don't have. Is he has his own style.
Presence.
He is an artist in his own in his sense. What he's creating is unique, recognisable and beautiful, but he's also good at teaching and showing something, and it's something that those techniques are transferable to other styles, which I think is. In fact, I actually, when I was doing my X Muppets, I did check his soft fabric tutorial because I knew he had some tips in there.
Yeah.
I didn't go with any of them, but I genuinely enjoyed watching it. So there's so many good. I could talk for hours about
there's
YouTube
a lot
channels for Blender.
There's a rabbit hole that you can go down on Instagram if you follow Blender.
I'm not on Insta.
Well, on Instagram, if you follow any Blender hashtags, you end up with some seriously crazily good artwork coming out of that.
I keep on seeing isometric model builds. That's all I ever see on Instagram.
Well,
I haven't
follow the
opened
Blender
it for months.
Yeah, I follow the Blender 52 stuff, and obviously they throw out idea generators, and then people throw it back, and then they put the best ones up. Okay. So you do see some really good stuff coming out of their sort of stuff.
There's a guy who I really liked back a few years ago called Blender Sushi.
That rings a bell.
And he's crazy. His stuff is wonderful. But he had this site called Blender Sushi, and it's still there. And you could go through it, and it's basically like these text documents rambling of like how he was trying to approach something. And I think he was a former Houdini user, and he had these great ideas, but he never fully explained how to do anything. Or, he'd miss stuff, and it would be like critical. So it was always like piecing stuff together. It was like a little adventure where you're going through and finding the thread and trying to put it together. And a lot of my early techniques, which got me noticed, came from like researching Blender Sushi's stuff. And he does live noding things, which I don't tend to watch so much because I'm not as interested in the direction he's in at the moment. But he's he's one of these guys who's like, everyone else is going this way and he's going, I'll just be over here. He's off on his own, doing his own thing, which is wonderful. Sorry, I don't think I would have been able to achieve any of the facial mocap stuff that I do if it wasn't for his initial video on it, where it was like I had to zoom in on a video and look at one of the settings and go, that's what he did. But yeah,
I was doing that today actually with Bifrost.
You
put the video on the highest quality you can, fill the screen as much as you can, and go, right, I'm going in.
The YouTube stuff's really good, but I'm going to go back to one of the Blender users that obviously really excited me during the pandemic, which was Thomas Butters, the guy from Face Punch, the makers of Rust.
Yeah, you've mentioned before on one of the early podcasts.
He's now live streaming again at night, so he's doing it as an unwind, and he's exploring he does it mostly on Twitch, so it's all through his Twitch channel, and it's really he just sort of chills out and talks people through, and he's got a regular bunch of followers. Some of them you can definitely tell are students, and he's helping them along, and it's just so refreshing. And
I'd consider doing a Twitch channel like that for Blender Clinic. That's what it was supposed to be, but it's like, what time of the day am I supposed to be doing this? I've got 2 kids.
Middle of the night.
Middle of the night, and that's when all the kids are up.
That's when they're awake.
That's when all the followers are up.
Which is why I will not be doing that.
No, I've got 2 kids as well, but thankfully mine are now 17 and 19. Makes life a little bit easier.
I've got a 14-month-old and an 8-year-old. So
Joe was 21 last week, so I'm now officially redundant as far as parenting goes, because that's the age that they leave home, isn't it?
No, well, hopefully.
He says yes.
He's not moved out. Has he moved out?
No, Marie's given him a pass till he's 30.
Well, of course, I'm not being funny. Have you looked at house prices recently? Of course, he did.
Yeah.
I mean,
he's in a fairly good job. He's in a good job, so he's hopefully saving. He must be saving because he's always asking me for money.
I'm hoping he's learning about electric cars.
Oh, he sells electric cars.
Oh, is he selling electric cars? Oh,
yes.
God, he's just so ahead of the curve, your boy.
He is. He's selling MG electric cars, the ZS. Very, very good. Chinese car.
I tell you, I've seen the best electric car ever, and it'll be the one that I buy. It's a German car called the X-Bus.
X-Bus?
Yeah, have a look. It looks like a Volkswagen had sex with a Tonka toy. And produced something which is basically, this is nothing with 3D, but it looks like a 3D car. It looks like it's one of their first attempts at building a model 3D car. And they've got some really nice wheels.
I thought Musk had already nailed that with his truck.
Oh no, that was a stealth vehicle without the wings. That was awful.
That was just like someone hit retopologize on the model, wasn't it?
It was yeah, very quick retopology. Hang on, I'll put a polygon here.
Planar decimate.
Listen,
mirror. You could hear all the automotive modelers out there just going, "Oh God, how are we going to sell that?"
Yeah, well, apparently they sell it by hitting it with a sledgehammer and breaking a window. But
That's exactly how you said it.
That was one of my favourite moments of it.
And he didn't
watch
even
this.
flinch.
This is never going to break.
He didn't even flinch. He just looked at it and went,
I'll try the
Yeah.
next one.
happened.
Yeah, broke 2 in a row.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Okay, so I suppose
we've talked about nothing, and we've recorded for 1 hour, 20 minutes, and 28 seconds, which means this podcast will be probably 1 hour, 17 minutes.
everything's
2 seconds.
staying in.
I feel like this was just the intro. I was like, hey,
I have to say,
ask me
it
any
does
questions?
feel like, yeah. There is one question that I would like to ask, if that's okay.
Okay.
It's very important. Custard creams or bourbon?
I don't know what a crusted cream is.
Forget that.
But,
Custard cream or bourbon?
Bourbon.
Okay, you're dead to me.
Yay! Winner.
The bourbons, they always taste dry.
Yeah, but what you got to do is you pry the one layer of biscuit off, then you scrape the chocolate off with the teeth. And then
Yes.
Yeah, and then you throw the
Yes.
biscuit away.
No, not so much. But yeah, I've got to admit, I think custard creams are actually the better biscuit. But because I was a child when I was introduced to them, you always go for the chocolate because you're a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And therefore, I've never shook that mentality, and bourbon biscuits are always the way I go.
That's another one for my dad, because my dad used to always buy me a pack of custard creams at Christmas. Not custard creams, bourbon biscuits. Oh, God.
There we go.
You see, it's addled a brain, means he's already... I mean, I'm definitely the oldest person out of the four of us. Right.
Jesus.
Oh, my
Gary, you
days.
poor man.
I should have... Listen,
I
I
think
should have
that's
been
the
drinking
intro
Monkey
sorted.
Shoulder as well, if that's what it is. I do like that whiskey.
It's a grand whiskey. I was going to drink Penderyn, but you slated me for being Welsh enough. So I mean, yeah. But I mean, Penderyn was actually the brewery, the distillery for Penderyn was round the corner from where I was shooting. I've been working on a short film with my daughter for the last 3 years.
Lovely.
So we shot it, and she was starring in it. She's only 8 now, so she was 6 at the time, I think, when we started filming. And we shot it, and then I've been basically doing the visual effects ever since. But Penderyn's distillery was round the corner, and we needed some barrels, and they were kind enough to lend us a couple of their big Penderyn barrels. So like in like half a dozen of the shots, there's just these big Penderyn whiskey barrels. And because it's supposed to be in Wales, it's very Welsh centric because it's about dragons. You know, it's kind of
Spoiler alert, we know what the VFX is.
It's dragons.
This is all coming out. I wouldn't worry about this, young man. Panic
It's,
not,
yeah.
he said doing his worst Michael Sheen.
It's such a weird film. It's supposed to be like a horror film for kids, but all the dialogue is stolen from aliens.
Really?
Yeah. It's very much.
They mostly
there's
come
a
out
chest,
at night.
There's a chest burst.
Mostly.
Mostly. Yeah. My daughter still says that to me because she learnt that line.
That's great.
And there's a scene where a dragon bursts out of someone's t-shirt, and
Yeah.
it's really silly. But
charge. Sorry.
I was hoping to have it done by St. David's Day last year, and then I was hoping to have it done by St. David's Day this year, but jobs keep coming up. And
Well, it's,
Kicking
don't worry.
ass,
My idea for a film I've had in my head, for about 13 years.
I tried
And-
to get it out. I tried to get it on film.
Yeah, but the problem is,
You.
John, it will take me far. I haven't got the time to actually do it, and that was one of John's ideas. Was I stupidly told John about it. That was the biggest mistake I've ever made.
Yep.
And all
It's
he's
like
got.
an itch that won't go away.
It is.
now.
It's an itch that he keeps on scratching at. And
well, hang on. How long is this film supposed to be?
it'll probably be
Is it a short or is it a
5 minutes
feature?
tops. I would have thought 5, maybe
Okay.
6, 7 minutes.
And is it fully animated?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And is this the thing that you were trying to get all the students in on to do?
Yes. The problem
That's
is that you
my
can't
idea.
throw something like that out there in the first episode because no one's listening. And then when people do come to it, they normally come into a podcast probably about 10th, 12th episode in.
Ooh,
And then they don't bother going. That's the earliest one.
It's just one of those. It's just one of those things that, like, obviously, we managed to get a pot of funding for Poach Studio. Poach Studio is my friend John Ball, who's a Blender user and world famous illustrator.
Very handy.
And he's worked on like everything. You know, he's done stuff, and he's got a very unique style. Including we went to the Blender conference for the first time together. Me, him, and our good friend Steve Thomas, another Blender user, and he went, "Oh, just a second, I just want to pop into the Mac store next door." And I was like, "Oh God, Mac, here we go," because those two are Apple heads, and I can't stand the stuff. But, I mean, I can. I like. There's a lot to like about the products, but a lot to dislike.
But Mac feels like Adobe before you even open the box.
It'll be in the cloud anyway at some point, so don't worry about it.
We walked into the store, and he was like, "I just wanted to check out the new Mac." And we didn't have a clue why, but it turns out it's because all the wallpaper was his illustrations.
Really?
Fantastic.
Yeah. And then it was like, he's like, "Do you want to go to the Adobe Mac store next year?" I was like...
You've done the artwork, haven't you? You've done the artwork.
Maybe. No, he was talking on it. And he's back. He's like that. He's anyway. That's John for you, but he's quite well known in that regard. So anyway, we managed to get like 25 grand to do a pilot episode for his idea on Gameland, and we're just finishing that now. And then we managed to get 25 grand for Codelings, which is my concept, which we're doing we're not doing a full pilot for on that one, because as we learned with Ungameland, it doesn't matter how much you try, and you can't do it for 25 grand. A pilot is just an animated, high quality animated show. You can't do for 25 grand. But we've nearly got there. We're close. But yeah, so Codelings, we're going to do a teaser trailer, and we're going to do all the supporting materials. But it's one of those things where, I mean, if you wanted to, then maybe I could put you in touch with my colleague John James, and maybe we could chase down some funding and sort of get that moving. You just need to hire people then, people like me.
But of course, no, it's absolutely I would. No, but the point is that I wanted this. The initial concept of this whole thing was I was going to do the whole thing on my own, using nothing but open source software.
Yeah.
And work has gotten in the way, because at no point have I not been earning money to support my coke, crack, heroin, and whiskey addiction.
I didn't know those were the names of your children.
That would be the ones, yes. Yes. Coke, come here. Charlie, put down that bottle of whiskey. Friends, yeah. No, I mean, so and in the back of my mind, it's probably just going to stay literally where that is, in the back of my mind.
No, I have a transcript. So
here we go.
You're tough. It's tough. It's out there. It's out.
I know, but I've got to board it and everything. It's just. Have
you ever encountered the phenomena that you can write something entirely unique, something so you and so perfectly only you could come up with it? If you sit on it long enough, then someone else writes the damn thing.
Oh, completely. Yeah, I had a really good idea for a book, and I started writing it and then stopped. And then, the major reason why I stopped was because I picked up a book that was exactly the same thing. And I was like, I've had this.
You've never picked up a J.K. Rowling book since, have you?
I'm like 75, 80 pages into this book. I'd done NaNoWriMo and gotten a shagload of this thing written down. And then literally, so I picked up a book and I read my plot word for word, pretty much off the back of the blurb section. I was like, oh, damn it.
Have you seen The Good Place?
Only the first and half of the second series.
Oh my God, watch it all. It's fantastic.
I know, I need to. My eldest daughter was in tears at the last episode.
But The Good Place is so close not in execution, but in like the internal sort of logic and the concept to something I wrote called All Hail the Undergod. All Hail is very different, but at the same time it's so close, but so different. But it was like watching that, I was like, see? I knew I was right that it could be done. It could, because people would be like, "Oh, you can't talk about religion. You can't talk about religion. We won't fund it because religion. Oh, it's a sensitive." And it's like, no, shut up. People want to talk about sensitive subjects. It's just how you talk about it, and it matters. That matters. Admittedly, some of my jokes were.
You see, mine is all. Mine is a lot of the whole first minute is basically visual foreshadowing hidden in all of the designs of all the background for everything that happens after that. So, there's things that you on second watching you'll go, oh, look at that cloud. Oh, that's so clever. That's kind of like, part and parcel of the whole thing. You can't watch it once. It's like it's a bit like, like Fight Club or Seventh Sign.
Going back to Ian
Both
Hubert on
good
Fight
films.
Club, all those
Yes.
all those mysteries were unravelled on how they pulled the shots off in such an early part of the techniques.
No, but you say that, but I have been doing, everyone I know in my industry has been doing buildings that way.
Yeah, fudging it.
Always have been. No, it's not fudging it. It's like saying, here's a picture, let's stick it on a tile, let's just alter the UVs to basically correct where it is. Now pull that bit, extrude that bit, we'll just move that map into there, and that map into there, and that map into there, and boom, there you go, that's all I need. That's 20 pixels, and I've got a whole frigging wall. I don't need to do another thing.
Do you know why it was Do you know why it's a revelation when Ian said it though? It's because industry outsiders such as myself spend 5 years of their career going, oh, I've got to do this scene, right? I have to build every bolt, everything, and put it together.
Yeah.
Why doesn't it look real? Why doesn't it look real?
Because it's not real.
And you do all that because it's not a photo projected onto a thing.
Yeah.
And it wasn't. The revelation didn't come for me when Ian told me. But I definitely spent 5 years thinking that was how it was done. And even when I knew it wasn't how it was done, I still wanted to do it the way I'd been trying to do it before because I had a God complex. And it's that thing. Yeah. And you'll see this, and this is like to anyone who's just starting out, this is the most important lesson, is like, I know you want to build every rock just to show that you can.
Yep.
But the reason that the professionals don't is because we don't got shit to prove, man.
Yeah.
We've done the rocks, we've built the rocks. You don't need to look at my portfolio and go, have you got any experience building rocks, sir? No, I can do rocks, I can do that, I can do this. Now I'm interested in how fast I can do it, get a result, and get it done, and tell my damn story.
I did.
And that's it.
I recently did a job which was all UV projection.
Is that the one you've got a tutorial for on YouTube?
It is essentially that. Yes, there's the F-Spy one. That's probably my most popular one, actually.
I was browsing the site, your channel earlier, and I spotted that. And I went, oh, it'd be interesting to see someone else using F-Spy because it's not saying it gets a lot of.
I used to teach that to the students at college. That was the first thing I sort of said. Look, if you're trying to reference something, just bit of free software, open it up, get it in.
Really
unless
useful.
it's anamorphic, in which case you're in trouble.
Well, then you follow Gary's tutorial, and then you actually.
Oh, is yours anamorphic?
Gary does a camera equalization, is it, or you actually take the bend out of the camera, don't you?
I take the bend out of it using Critter. Yeah.
Yeah.
I should watch that then.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
I was going to watch it anyway. It's just it's taken me this long to find your YouTube channel.
Nearly 10,000 views, Gary. On that.
Is that how many it's got now? Yeah. I know. It's the one that keeps on being repeated. So if you watch one of my videos, it's like, do you need to watch this? And that's not me. And it's like a general search brings up that's quite high, I think, as well in the general search. No, I'm really pleased with that one, actually. And again, there's a section where I'm building the environment where I just went to do mode. So it was sort of like, first of all, you cut this bit and you do this and do this and oh god, this is so boring. People are going to be bored with this. Quick, shrink it down and get rid of my VO. But I actually, on that one, did. There is a version where I did the whole thing in the proper length. Of course, I should do a Patreon page just so people can access the original full me recordings, especially the ones within the middle. I sort of get a phone call from my mum, and that's recorded there as well. There's some corkers actually.
Oh, this is just a really off random topic. As soon as you mentioned your mum, I was doing a Google search today for the address.
Mum?
No, for
I knew it was you.
For my address, and I sort of followed the camera round my road. My mum lives just round the corner, and I looked at my mum's house, and she's there on Google Maps. Putting the bin out in her slippers. Yay! That's now been shared around all the family. Thanks, Mum. Well, I think we've absolutely kicked the crap out of open source tonight. Thank you, Chris.
So where are we? So can we just say thank you, Chris, so much for coming along and filling our time with wonderful stories. And quite frankly, that's all this. It's all this podcast is worth for is a good chat. Quite frankly,
it is.
It is. But it's just nice to have, as we say, another face on the screen, another voice on the airwaves, because we are just always better when we have someone else to talk to.
We are.
Anytime. I mean, absolutely my pleasure to be here. Really enjoyed it. And it's lovely to actually finally speak to you, Gary. John
You're sick of
talks
him.
about you a lot. Very fondly, very fondly.
He talks of me very fondly.
He does.
I heard then was, he talks about me fondling.
I mean, that is part of it. But that's why he speaks about you so fondly.
Okay, that's only because
You shouldn't let him watch, Gary. You shouldn't let him watch.
It's been an absolute pleasure, and I must say I'm looking forward to when we can all actually meet up and sample some
Penderyn. Well, actually, at the studio we serve Pipes beer, which is a really, really, really lovely local brewery.
A local
brewery. So no, please do come down. The studio's Cult VR. We've got like the biggest full screen, full dome projection thing. Well, it was the biggest in Europe until very recently because the founders helped set up another one somewhere in England. But yeah, so we've got and loads of mad tech and weird stuff going on there all the time.
Cool.
So you know, come down. We've got an indoor bar, an outdoor bar. We've got a hot tub. It's all good. It's all good, man.
I'm not getting my boobs out for anyone, mate.
Okay, fair enough. But please do try and find the time and come down and visit because it'd be lovely to have you both.
Yeah, we're definitely gonna
Definitely
make the
will.
trip.
Yeah, the times are changing. We're able to do these things now.
Pandemic's over. We're in endemic mode.
It's not. Yes, we're in going into the endemic zone. First of all, Chris, thank you and goodbye.
Thank you very much, Gary. It's been a pleasure.
It's always a pleasure.
Thank you, Chris, and goodbye, Gary.
Goodbye, John. Is it a goodbye from me?
It's a goodbye from you.
Okay. Is it a goodbye from you?
It's always a goodbye from me.
Okay then. Right. Okay. See you later. And thank you everyone for listening. Hopefully you'll hear from us again at some point very soon. Cheers. Bye.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye.
This work is licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike 4.0 International License. Any opinions stated during the course of this podcast belong purely to myself and to John and are based at the time that we record this. The theme music is My Everything by DJ Quads. If you like that, and I'm sure you probably did, there is a lot more of his great stuff which you can find at soundcloud.com/DJ Quads, or his music is also promoted by www.free-stock-music.com.